As human ships faced the Galactic Empire, humanity couldn't help but laugh. The vast reaches of space were alight with the shimmering glow of the Imperial fleet, a seemingly endless armada stretching across the stars. Each vessel was sleek and dark, bearing the Imperial insignia, a symbol of order and unbreakable dominance. The Galactic Empire had ruled for centuries, with hundreds of worlds and thousands of species under its iron grip. From the hardened Varel to the technocratic Cenari, the Empire's power was absolute and unchallenged. Today, however, they faced an anomaly, a new, unruly species that had clawed its way onto the galactic scene: humans. In the dimly lit command deck of the Imperial flagship, Iridian, High Commander Lothar observed the humans' modest fleet with disdain. The human ships, roughly a third of the size of the Imperial battlecruisers, were scattered loosely across the sector. There were no precise formations or defensive maneuvers, just a ragtag group of vessels hanging in space like misfit toys. Lothar sneered. So, these humans truly think they stand a chance against the might of the Empire? He muttered. What primitive creatures. Beside him, Sub-Commander Xyler, a wiry alien with metallic skin, tapped at his console. High Commander, our scans indicate their weapons systems are, well, let's just say inferior would be a generous term. Lothar chuckled darkly. Open a channel. Let's give these Deathworlders one final chance to surrender before we wipe them from existence. A communication officer nodded. Tapping into the human fleet's comms, the holoscreen flickered to life, displaying the bridge of the human flagship, Resolute. Standing at its helm was Captain Aidan Rayner, a tall, lean man with an easy smile that seemed to mock the gravity of the situation. His bridge crew appeared equally relaxed, some leaning casually against consoles, others even snacking as if this were some routine patrol. Lothar's sneer deepened as he observed their carefree demeanor. Captain Rayner of Earth, I presume? He asked, his voice dripping with contempt. Rayner nodded, still grinning. The one and only. I take it you're the one leading this rather dramatic gathering? You are facing the mightiest fleet in the known galaxy, Lothar said coldly. Surrender now, and we may allow your people to live as subjects of the Empire. Resist, and I assure you, it will be the last decision you ever make. Rayner scratched his chin, casting a thoughtful look at his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Imani, who was scrolling through a tablet as though she were bored. Well, Commander Lothar, I gotta admit, it's tempting, Rayner replied, his tone light. I mean, I'm sure it'd be nice being part of an empire as big and shiny as yours, but, you see, we humans have this little problem with being told what to do, so I'm afraid that's a hard no from us. Lothar's face hardened, and the bridge around him bristled with tension. For a species as organized and obedient as the Empire's, such insubordination was unheard of. He glanced at Xyler, whose metallic features betrayed a hint of anger. They're mocking us, High Commander. They have no idea who they're dealing with. Rayner laughed openly, as if he'd heard Lothar's remark. Oh, I think we know exactly who we're dealing with, and if you're underestimating us, well, that's just going to make this all the more fun. Fun? Lothar spat the word as though it were an insult. You face annihilation, and yet you laugh? Rayner shrugged, his grin unwavering. What can I say? It's a human thing. We've got a habit of laughing at things that should scare us. Lothar's patience finally snapped. Prepare the assault, he ordered, his voice a deadly whisper. Wipe them from existence. On board the Resolute, the human bridge crew was barely fazed by the Empire's threats. Lieutenant Imani glanced at Rayner, her expression a mix of excitement and calm. They're really going all in, aren't they? Rayner nodded, his eyes scanning the Imperial fleet. Yep, big ships, big egos, probably think they'll have this done in under 5 minutes. And they don't know a thing about our new tech, Imani added, unable to hide a smirk. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as a wildcard. While they didn't have the vast fleets or immense resources of the Empire, they had something even more dangerous: unpredictability. Over decades of interstellar travel, human engineers had perfected adaptive tech, modular weapon systems, and most importantly, a highly experimental stealth drive that was yet untested in large-scale combat. Rayner turned to his crew, who were eagerly waiting for his next move. All right, team, let's give these Imperials a taste of human ingenuity. As the Empire's fleet began its advance, the Resolute and the other human ships executed a series of rapid, unpredictable maneuvers. their thrusters firing in erratic bursts that baffled the Imperial targeting systems. The Empire had expected rigid formations and conventional tactics. They were completely unprepared for the humans' evasive maneuvers. On the Iridian, Lothar was quickly losing his composure. What are they doing?" he demanded, as the human ships darted between Imperial cruisers with dizzying speed. Zyler's hands flew over his console. "Their trajectories are impossible to predict. Our systems can't lock onto them." Raynor's voice crackled through the Imperial comms once more. "Having trouble, Commander? You guys should really work on those targeting systems. They're a bit outdated, don't you think?" Lothar's anger burned hotter, his pride deeply wounded. "Enough games," he snarled. "Launch the plasma volleys. Obliterate them." A storm of plasma bolts tore through the void, lighting up the space between the two fleets. The human ships, however, danced around the projectiles, narrowly avoiding each one with expert precision. Every Imperial officer on the bridge of the Iridian watched in stunned silence as the humans dodged their attacks with an almost playful grace. Lothar could hardly believe it. They're toying with us," he whispered, his voice shaking with disbelief. Back on the Resolute, Raynor turned to Amani with a grin. "They're using everything they've got, and we haven't even broken a sweat." Imani chuckled, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "Care to show them what we're really capable of?" Raynor nodded, giving the command, "Deploy the stealth drives. Let's make this interesting." One by one, the human ships seemed to flicker, then vanish from sight. The Imperial fleet scrambled to locate their targets, but their sensors came up empty. Panic spread through the ranks of the Empire as their mighty fleet was rendered effectively blind. On board the Iridian, Lothar's composure shattered. "Where did they go? Find them," he barked, his voice tinged with desperation. And then, just as suddenly as they had disappeared, the human ships reappeared, surrounding the Imperial fleet in a wide, loose formation. Raynor's voice echoed through the Imperial comms once more, his tone casual and mocking. "You see, Commander, humans have a saying back on Earth: the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And from where I'm sitting, you guys look pretty big." Empire's desperation. The command deck of the Iridian was buzzing with frantic energy as High Commander Lothar's carefully maintained facade cracked. His officers scrambled, their movements erratic as they tried to pinpoint the human ships now circling them like predators eyeing their prey. With each passing second, the Empire's unassailable image crumbled. "Where are they?" Lothar demanded, his voice sharper than a plasma blade. Subcommander Zyler stammered, "Their ships appear and disappear. Sir, our sensors detect faint traces, but their maneuvers make it impossible to get a fix." "Impossible," Lothar muttered to himself. No one had ever dared to mock the Empire's fleet, let alone evade it so completely. This was not the reaction he had expected from a young, supposedly inferior species. Humans were supposed to be easily subdued, brought to heel. Suddenly, a signal crackled over the Imperial comms again. Captain Raynor's voice, unflappably calm and tinged with amusement, filled the bridge. "Everything all right over there, Commander?" Raynor's tone was light, playful. "You sound a little tense. I thought you guys were professionals." A murmur rippled through the Imperial officers, each word from the human captain a fresh wound to their pride. For a moment, the Empire's greatest fleet stood frozen, dumbfounded. This was not how the Empire's battles went. Lothar's grip on the command console tightened until his knuckles turned white. With a voice as cold as the void, he spat, "Engage Protocol Zeta 19, flood all sectors with plasma rounds. I want them vaporized." Zyler hesitated, glancing nervously at his superior. "But sir, that protocol risks destabilizing our own shields. If we..." Lothar's glare silenced him. "Do it, now." On board the Resolute, Raynor watched as the Imperial ships began to fire wildly, plasma rounds flooding the space around them in a frenzied assault. To anyone unfamiliar with the Empire, this would have looked like chaos, but Raynor saw the strategy behind it. The Empire was attempting to overwhelm them through sheer force, flooding every possible angle with weaponry. It was a tactic born out of fear and desperation. "Guess we rattled them, huh?" Lieutenant Sarah Imani smirked as she watched the plasma rounds pass harmlessly through empty space where the Resolute had been only seconds before. Raynor chuckled. "Looks that way. They're playing right into our hands." He tapped a few commands into his console, then turned to his crew. "Initiate Plan R. Let's teach them what improvisation really looks like." With practiced precision, The human fleet executed Plan R, a tactic developed specifically to counter the Empire's brute force strategies. Instead of dodging each plasma volley individually, the human ships moved in coordinated shifts, creating an ever-shifting formation that wove through the Imperial fire like water around rocks. To the Empire's sensors, it was chaos. To the human fleet, it was a dance. Back on the Iridian, Lothar's patience was at its breaking point. He stared at his monitors, watching the humans evade his every move with a baffling ease. His officers exchanged worried glances, the fear in their eyes growing as they witnessed the Empire's elite fleet outmaneuvered at every turn. In a moment of frustration, Lothar slammed his fist down on the console, cracking the surface. Enough of this humiliation, he roared. Deploy the Titanium-class dreadnoughts. The dreadnoughts were the Empire's ultimate weapon, hulking, armored behemoths that dwarfed even the largest human ships. Each one was outfitted with plasma cannons the size of city blocks, and shield generators capable of withstanding direct hits from planet-based weaponry. In their arrogance, the Empire considered them invincible. As the dreadnoughts moved into formation, blocking the stars with their immense frames, Lothar allowed himself a cold smile. Let's see them laugh their way out of this. On board the Resolute, Imani raised an eyebrow as she spotted the dreadnoughts on the scanner. Well, they've brought out the big guns. Raynor glanced at the massive vessels approaching. He let out a slow whistle. They sure are shiny, aren't they? The human crew chuckled, but there was a nervous undercurrent among the newer members. These dreadnoughts were behemoths, the stuff of legends and nightmares. However, Raynor knew his crew, knew their grit, and above all, knew humanity's greatest strength, the ability to turn adversity into advantage. Time for the real fun, Raynor announced. He pulled up the fleet's comms channel. All units, initiate Operation Mirage. Operation Mirage was one of humanity's most recent advancements, a series of advanced holographic decoys that projected fully believable ship signatures. With the press of a button, every human ship seemed to split into 2, then 4, until hundreds of identical vessels filled the space between the two fleets. On board the Iridian, the Imperial fleet stared in stunned silence as the empty blackness of space filled with countless human ships. Lothar watched, his eyes widening in horror. Impossible, he whispered, trying to rationalize what he was seeing. They can't have that many ships. Xyler stammered. Our sensors, they can't tell which are real and which are decoys. High Commander, what do we do? Lothar was speechless. The Empire, for all its military might and technological superiority, had never encountered this level of unpredictability. Their battles were precise, their enemies predictable. But these humans, with their humor, their unpredictability, and their refusal to play by the Empire's rules, they were unlike anything he'd ever faced. The turning point. While the Empire was distracted by the false targets, the real human ships maneuvered around the massive dreadnoughts, targeting their vulnerable propulsion systems and shield generators with precision strikes. One by one, the dreadnoughts began to falter, their shields flickering and their plasma cannons going dark as critical systems were taken offline. On board the Resolute, Imani couldn't hide her smile. It's like taking down the Goliaths back on Earth, she quipped, watching as another dreadnought's engines went dark, leaving it adrift. Raynor grinned, and here they thought size was all that mattered. The Imperial fleet was in disarray. The humans had managed to disable half of their dreadnoughts, rendering the behemoths floating in space, powerless and vulnerable. Lothar watched the slaughter unfold, his pride wounded beyond repair. In a final, desperate move, he ordered a full retreat. The once mighty Imperial fleet, battered and broken, began to pull back, their engines flickering as they limped away from the battle. Epilogue, a message from humanity. As the Imperial fleet retreated into the distance, Captain Raynor ordered a message be sent across all Imperial frequencies. He stepped in front of the holoscreen, his expression shifting from amusement to something colder, more resolute. High Commander Lothar, he began, his voice carrying across the void. Consider this your first lesson in dealing with humanity. You came here to subjugate us, to force us to bend to your Empire's will. But here's the thing, we don't bend, we don't break, and we don't back down. He leaned closer, his eyes steely. Next time you come knocking, make sure you're ready for the answer. With that, the transmission cut, leaving the Imperial fleet to process the unthinkable. They had been defeated not by a superior force, but by a handful of humans and their unbreakable will. The galaxy would remember this day, the day the mighty Empire was humbled. the day humanity laughed in the face of impossible odds, and the day a new power took its place among the stars. The end.